Okay, we are live. My name is Dan Book Nook Noggin. This is my channel. Today we're interviewing. That's your turn. Hey,
Oh,
Brad.
hello. Yes, I know. Though, sorry. I'm like, yes, that's. I'm Sonora Taylor. I've written several books and short story collections, including Little Paranoias and Seeing Things. And I'm really happy to be chatting with Dan about my upcoming collection, someone to share my nightmares, and just whatever else we happen to chat about.
Yeah, I have to say, I really loved Seeing Things. I think that was one of my favorites out of the books of yours that I've read.
Well, thank you.
I well, not only do you write believable characters, but I really enjoyed that one because it was funny too. Like the one scene with the mayor.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
that be a spoiler if I talk about that?
No, that's okay. That's in the third chapter. So if you want to detail
Okay.
it.
Okay, I'm putting up the link right now. So that way, if anyone on Twitter wants to go ahead. Okay, yes, and the upcoming book that you have coming out, I'm going to throw up the link to that right there in the chat. And
Thank
that
you.
is, I can never get this right on the camera. Someone to share my nightmares with. Okay. I forgot how many short stories are in here again?
There are 9.
9. Okay, I thought I remembered that. Okay, so let's get right into the questions. What got you into horror?
I mean, I've always been pretty interested in it ever since I was a kid. And so, I think and I also always like to write. So I think I just kind of gravitated toward writing horror fiction or dark fiction just because, that's what I grew up watching. And my parents are big horror fans. So, that was going to have an
Nice.
influence as well. And then, yeah, just when I would get story ideas, I would tend to give them a dark turn. And my editor Evelyn Duffy actually noted that she thought my strength was in writing darker stuff. So I started focusing on that more, and yeah, it's what I gravitate to with writing. A lot of the ideas I have are in that framework, and so I just enjoy writing it. It's fun for me, even if the stories themselves are a little dark, and I like being able to imagine, within like kind of a real world scenario, but I do also tend to gravitate towards stuff that could maybe happen in the real world, or at least like, even if there's a supernatural element, it's not completely removed from.
Right, right. You did like an environmental horror story in Little Paranoias. I can't remember the exact name of that story, but it was like in a world where the nature had kind of taken over. It was
Yeah, I
kind of
think
like
you're talking about
dark fantasy, right?
Seed.
Yeah, that might have been it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was like another plant apocalyptic one. That definitely, yeah, I like writing nature gone awry. That's probably my favorite, like, supernatural, non-real
Right.
things, just kind of like nature rebelling. Because I had written a similar not similar story in terms of like being the exact same, but like probably my first major nature attack story was Wither, which is from the short story collection of the same name. And that one, that one was actually, if you don't mind me going on a bit of a tangent. So, in the movie The Happening, they tried to like explain how the plants were making people suicidal by using science, but they got the
Yeah.
science wrong, and I was upset because the science is actually that plants will modify themselves to be poisonous to bugs that will eat them. So it's like you have
Oh
to
yeah.
eat
Right.
it
Right.
before. And so that was what I kind of was correcting that in Wither, along with writing kind of like a post-apocalyptic story with this family in the woods. But then, yeah, with Seed, that was kind of looking at it more like the plants just completely destroyed civilization. And then on top of that, if they weren't feeding on people, then the people were becoming plant life. So it was basically just
Yeah, I thought that
completely
was interesting, and it was a different touch, like kind of like the swamp thing, almost like
a
these people are
little.
like.
And I was definitely influenced by Annihilation, the film version. I'll admit I've only seen the film and haven't read the book yet, but
Yeah, I haven't read the books either. I have the first two, and yeah,
Mhm.
the film was crazy. It was definitely different.
It was so good, though. I loved it. I actually keep meaning to show that one to my husband because he's never seen it. So
Oh, he hasn't. Yeah,
no.
that's a great one. All right. So there's not a particular film that you remember from being a kid that was like, yeah, this is like got you really interested in horror, like.
um, I mean, I guess just because I was, honestly, the film that probably most guided me in that direction was Edward Scissorhands, because that was
Okay.
my favorite movie when I was little, like when I was 5 or 6. That was where I first saw Vincent Price, and that is kind of, when my stuff isn't completely dark, or um I don't want to say funny, but like kind of dark comedy. It is looking more at like a character study of monstrosity than like being monstrous. And so,
Right.
yeah, I would say that probably had an influence. But I mean, I just was like so young that, it's kind of hard for me to say, yeah, I wanted to write stuff like that. I mean, like, because I didn't really start writing it until I was 20, and that was so far removed
Yeah, that's
from.
where I was going to go next. I was going to ask you because it kind of sounded like you were saying you were writing when you were very young, and I know some people like
I mean, I did
started
write. I
writing
wrote
young.
stories when I was young, and I did write a couple like monster stories, but they weren't like. I also wrote like just slice of life stories, or fairy tales, things like that. I once wrote a YA style novel when I was 9. That was not good,
Oh,
but
cool.
there was like no horror in that, for instance. So because I was also not, for all the movies I was watching or TV shows I liked, like the Beetlejuice cartoon. I wasn't reading a lot except for Goosebumps. I mean, Goosebumps definitely had
Okay.
an influence on my writing, but I was also reading a lot of Babysitter's Club. I was reading a lot of movie novelizations, like books about teenagers, because I was like right before YA became an actual genre. Like pretty much all we had was Sweet Valley High, and that is even more for middle schoolers than for high schoolers. So once I got to
Right.
high school, I pretty much just went into Stephen King, Augustin Burroughs, Anita Shreve, a lot of like literary fiction with a little horror mixed in. So
Right. Okay. Now that you answered that, now I'm going to go into what are you? Who would you consider your influences? That makes a nice little lead into that.
yeah, well, Augustin Burroughs is definitely a big influence of mine. He wrote the memoir Running with Scissors.
Okay, I was
He
just going to ask you because I'm not familiar with the name.
Yeah, he wrote Running with Scissors. He wrote Dry, A Wolf at the Table. Most recently, he wrote Toil and Trouble, which is his memoir about realizing he's a witch. And he just writes so well, because it's like he writes about really dark things, but also makes it kind of funny and relatable, because he's just like, yeah, this really happened, And I just really love his voice and the way he writes. Let's see, other influence. I would say Thomas Hardy. He's definitely one of my favorite of
Okay.
the classics, and especially his prose. Like, I love the way he describes scenes, and also his affinity for nature, and like, the consequences of moving away from the pastoral, for sure. That was an influence on my writing. So I would say probably those two. And I also got a lot of inspiration from from I just saw Brad's comment about The Happening. Yes, it was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. I'm trying to pay attention to what you're saying, and I just happened to see that, and I think you typed it a while ago.
But anyway, what I was gonna, I was talking. Oh, I got a lot of influence actually from comic strips, especially
Okay.
with dialogue and pacing. So I grew up reading a lot of Calvin and Hobbes and Foxtrot,
Fucking love
and
Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, and Pearls Before Swine was another favorite comic
Oh, I
strip of
kind of
mine.
remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also really like Archie. So we're getting all the Happening commentary. I also really liked Archie growing up, and even though like some of it was pretty corny, it was like a good primer in like writing situations, writing dialogue, figuring out a cast of characters, stuff like that. So that
So
definitely
are you a fan of the Riverdale show or no?
I was actually pretty obsessed with it for the first 2 seasons, but then it just started getting too up its own ass. Like it was just not very enjoyable anymore. It was kind of like running out of steam. I think they were trying to take in. I think too many cooks were getting in there. Like I think there was a lot of like execs getting involved or listening too much to the fan base. Not in the sense that like fans are wrong, but there's just so many different ways that can be done. But when you start to see like obvious nods to the tweets and that in lieu of plot, like that just starts to become like, yeah.
Yeah.
So like
I'm
still
sorry I
remember
interrupted what you were saying.
Like there was one moment where like 3 of the dads came in, right? And, all 3 of those dads were hot. And Kevin calls them like the Riverdale DILF squad, which is like, I think a thing that was in the fan base. But like the part that ruined it for me is that one of those dads was his own father. And so that's when I'm like, you really should have thought that through a little bit more, because he's got this trio of dads coming in and he's like, Riverdale DILF squad. It's like, you were saying that about your own dad, Kevin.
Right.
No.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. Like you were in the middle of saying something. Like sometimes I'm just like, if I get a thought in my head, I better say it.
No,
I'm going to lose it.
Please do. Yeah.
I have ADHD.
No worries. If it's something I really want to say, I'll remember it and put it back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, try to keep it a little casual at the same time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how do you find time to write? Because I know, aren't you you work in DC, right?
Yes, I work at a nonprofit, but I've been working from home for the past year and a half.
Oh, okay.
Because of COVID, and we'll probably continue working from home, but I find time to write just kind of in between tasks. Lately, it's been a little slower than normal just because of everything going on. It can be really hard to just sit down and write. I'll just like look at Word and be like, but I don't want to do this, And so I'm actually like...
You kind of put out a lot of content, though, like in the last 2 years. I mean, a lot of short stories.
Yeah,
and
and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to give myself permission to maybe slow it down a little bit. I mean, I'm going to try and keep 2022 focused on the anthology I'm editing with Nico Bell, because that's going to be a whole job in and of itself, like selecting stories and curating an anthology.
Is that something you could tell us more about, like the title and all that, or?
Sure. It's called Diet Riot, a fatter punk anthology, and it's going to be filled with fat positive horror.
Is it it's probably not on Goodreads yet, right? Because you guys are still working on it.
It's not on there yet, but we'll let people know when it's ready. We'll probably build that once we have the cover, so that we can put it in there. But submissions open September 15th. So actually they open on Monday, and they'll be open through December 31st. So you'll have time to get your stories to us if you want to submit.
That sounds like it would be fun, though. I mean, I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot of submissions for that.
Yeah, I hope so. And I'm really excited to see what people do with it. Because, the whole reason we're doing this anthology is because, I can't tell you the number of times I've read a horror book, especially, and fatness is equated with the grotesque, with monstrosity, with sadness. I mean, even authors with the best of intentions still kind of rely on that because it's so ingrained in our culture that I honestly think half of them don't even think anything of it. And we want to have stories where like the person being fat doesn't make them a villain or doesn't make them gross or horrific or terrible. It's just part of their character,
Or
so
one of the first victims.
In the story.
They usually do that in movies too. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saw that Brad just asked a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to distract you with it. That's like, oh shit, I better put it away.
No, that's fine. They pop up for me too. So it says, if someone is new to my work, where would they suggest? I suggest they start. I would suggest starting with Little Paranoias because that's a very fast read and it's a lot of stories, but a lot of them are flash fiction, so it's easy to just read in little spurts. It's also probably my most popular release to date, although Seeing Things is probably a close second in that regard. So if you're more interested in novels than short stories, then maybe start with Seeing Things. You also couldn't go wrong with Without Condition, but that's a bit more of a commitment. So I would say start with Little Paranoias.
Yeah, that one was a little bigger, but like it went pretty fast for me. I felt like it was pretty fast paced.
Mm-hmm. I guess it just depends on what you're looking for, because Without Condition has no supernatural elements whatsoever. It's all stuff that could happen in real life. So if you're a bit more into that type of fiction.
Yeah. But it wasn't totally just like a serial killer thing. It had like a romance going on at the same time. So, I mean, like if people are into that also, kind of, I don't know. I thought it was a really fast read for me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was, it wasn't like a slog of a read. So.
And to answer The World According to Jay, he asked, what I prefer writing, short stories, novels, or novellas? I'd probably say short stories. That's actually what I started writing, which my editor, Evelyn, said to me that usually it's the other way around. People write a novel first and then write short stories, but I started out writing short stories. And I think it's just because I'm very here's the bare bones of the story, and sometimes to the point where it's not enough, and so I have to go back and add more. There are some ideas like Without Condition that I know is going to be too big for a short story when I go in writing it, but more often than not, I start with a short story idea and then I realize it's going to be bigger. So that's usually where the novels come from, or even the novellas come from.
So are you a pantser then, or do you...
Yes, I am very much a pantser. If anything, I might write down like a quick little synopsis for myself if it's something I don't want to forget and I'm working on something else. And sometimes while I'm writing, I might start to write things down because just to note, okay, here's where this and this and this. But even if I write things down, I don't make myself follow it because more often than not, the endings change.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I have the novel I'm going to work on next. I had a completely different thought for it, and now I've taken out the supernatural element I was going to put in there, and now I'll either replace it with something or have it be nothing. So,
can you tell us anything about that, or?
Sure. It's going to be called Errant Roots, and it's about a woman's maternal line and the ways they believe that it's going to be about the strange things they do that they think they need to maintain some kind of order. I haven't decided yet if the order will be real or not. So I guess you'll just have to read it and see. But right now I'm kind of envisioning a cross between Ready or Not and The Witch, which are two of my favorite movies. So
I don't think I've seen Ready or Not yet. I've seen The Witch.
Ready or Not is so good. You should check that out. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime, isn't it?
Maybe. We watched it on HBO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
maybe we watched it on Showtime. I don't know. It was on one of the movie channels.
Right. That's the one where the newlywed couple and they hide and go seek kind of thing.
They have to play hide and seek, and but she finds out that whoever finds her is trying to kill her. So.
Yeah, they give that away in the trailer.
Yes, they do. Yeah, it's well, why would I even watch this? They even give it away in the first 5 minutes of the movie because they have the pre.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so I was going to ask you about writing routine, but I think you kind of answered that. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things I'm kind of interested in, I was kind of thinking about this when I was reading Without Condition. So are the locations in your books real places? Did you know of a place that was kind of like an old pumpkin farm in Without Condition, or?
Yeah, the places. So the names of the towns and without condition is an example because actually one of the things I've noticed is in a lot of my short stories. Well, some of them I list places, but I'm not always going to list a location. But in the novels, I usually do because you got to know where it
Yeah.
is. But anyway, yeah. So the towns, the main towns in without condition are I made the names, but they are based on places. And Leslie, which is the town where Kara and her mother live, is partially based on Clayton, North Carolina, which is outside of Garner.
Okay.
And the reason I mentioned Clayton is because there's a pumpkin farm there that I used to go to for Halloween. It was called like the Clayton Fear Farm, and it was scary as shit. Like, you know, they did not fuck around with their haunted house. Like, it's like I still remember one that was like the butcher barn, and you were walking through, and they had like the rubber pig bodies like banging against you, and then people would jump out from behind it. Like, I am such a sucker for jump scares. Like, the only reason I don't like them is because they work. Like, I hate them. Like, because it just like I'm terrified of things like jumping out. So like, it could be the world's worst haunted house, but if you have people jumping out at me, like, I will be terrified. So but they had that. But and so this Fear Farm, though, which is also kind of hilarious, also does a Christmas light hayride after Thanksgiving. And we would go to that a lot. And I remember when we were riding the Christmas light hayride, we went by a old pumpkin field where the pumpkins were kind of left to rot, and you know, and it was just turnover for next year. But that's kind of an image I had in mind of like the old pumpkin farm where they live. So yes, that's partially based on towns like Clayton, which are like outskirt of the triangle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a feel because I don't remember. Did it say it was in North Carolina? Because it's been a few years since I've read it. Okay,
it did. Yeah,
I think it said it was North Carolina.
I think even the back of the book might say rural North Carolina, but yes, it's set in North Carolina because when she meets Jackson, she's in Raleigh, and that is an actual city, obviously, because it's the capital. So,
so did you grow up in North Carolina?
I lived there for 8 years.
Okay.
And yeah, I do tend to set things in places I've lived. Like North Carolina shows up a lot in these stories, and then seeing things. I actually was born in Massachusetts, and so once again, the towns in there aren't real, but you know, I lived in Massachusetts for several years and I have family there still. So, you know, I have a familiarity with the area, with the coast towns, stuff like that. And actually, I think I called it Phillipston or something, but the town where Abby lives, I named it after Black Phillip and the witch.
Now, I want to go back. Brad had asked a question about the Ladies of Horror Fiction.
Okay.
That you won an award, and he wanted the. Oh wait, where did it go?
I saw it. There it is. Okay. It felt great. Those were the first awards. He asked, how did it feel to be a Ladies of Horror Fiction award winner for Little Paranoias and Without Condition? Yeah, I mean, I was so happy. I was so like pleasantly surprised.
Sorry, my family's home early, and I didn't expect them to come barging in.
Cameos. If my dog wasn't asleep, I'd have her make a cameo, but she's resting in her bed right now, so she would just grunt at me.
I'm live right now, you know.
But anyway, yeah, no, it was such a treat winning those awards, and like, you know, I've got the certificates hanging up in my room.
Nice.
And yeah, I remember like reading through the nominations, and like when I saw my books on there, I was like, because you know they don't email. At least that last time they didn't email the nominees before announcing them. You found out by reading the post. Yeah. So, but I liked that because it was a nice surprise. So I didn't have to like be fake shocked on Twitter, like, oh my, you know. But yeah, no, it was great, and I like Yeah, and the women there are amazing. I love their
Yeah,
website.
Lori and Jen, and I can't think of who else. There's like a lot of them, though.
Tracy is on there. Audra, Emily. I know Cassie started blogging with them, and then they have one guy, Alex.
Oh,
So
yeah, I think I saw that, yeah.
yeah.
But I don't really see anything from him. So I think that's why I always forget that they have a guy on their team.
we follow each other on Twitter, and I actually met him at Scares That Care this past summer. He's cool.
Okay, yeah, I thought I saw you tweet about that. Yeah, looks like you guys had some good times there. You met.
Oh, we did. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was also my first
concerned about COVID or
the pandemic.
Oh, so. Was it really?
Yeah.
Were you concerned about COVID at all, or?
A little, especially because, the Scares of Care was happening kind of around the time Delta was coming up, and more places were starting to put mask mandates back in order, and actually masks were required at Scares That Care unless you were eating or drinking, or if you were a vendor, you could take yours off, like if people weren't at your table and you needed a break, but otherwise, you had to keep your mask on. And so I just made sure to bring some comfortable masks with me, because I find that if it's on my face for too long, I'll start sweating or something, especially if
right.
But the masks did help. And I mean, knock on wood, when I came back, I did a test because my godmother was coming up to visit, and it came back negative. So, I felt very safe there. And I'm actually going to be at the Scares That Care Author Con in April that Brian Keene just announced. So once I saw that was happening, and I saw a few people I knew were coming, including my friend Sherry White, who's also an author, I'm like, screw it, I'm going to go ahead and buy a table. So I did, I guess, especially they're like half the price of what you pay for the summer table. And I'd already bought a summer table, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I love that everything goes to charity, and it's a great event. There's a great energy there. Everyone's chill and just having a good time. So.
Right. I would love to go, but I think I looked at the prices online, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's also easier for me because I can just drive there. Williamsburg is 3 hours away in traffic, so.
Right. Yeah, it'd be kind of far for me. I'm way up in here in New York. So.
Yeah. You're in upstate, right?
Yeah. Central, just below the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually in, I know this is nowhere near you, but I was in New York City last weekend.
Yeah, it's like a 4-hour drive for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. I had a friend, she was a theater friend, and she moved up to Rochester to go to school. And we were chuckling because she's big on being able to go to New York City and see stage shows, but where she was moving, she was actually either going to be the same distance away from New York City as we are, or further. Because, Virginia is about a 3.5, 4-hour drive without traffic to New York City. So I actually saw
Rochester's like an hour and a half, 2 hours for me. Like that.
So I actually saw 2 questions, and I want to answer Brad, so I'm going to answer Jay's.
I'm trying to, they're typing them kind of fast.
That's okay.
Go back.
So Jay, the answer to that with the finding writing time in between is I just try and find moments where I'm not in the middle of anything and also feel the inspiration hit, and then I just write. If I'm writing on a deadline, I try and make it a point to be like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and write this thing. I am taking a small break right now, but just for a couple weeks. I'm probably going to work on something soon, but I wrote a story last month, and so just kind of getting that together. And then, but otherwise, I just try and find a little time. If I really need to sit down and write, I'll go up into my room and shut the door and do it, and I can usually knock something out because I don't have any distractions. But otherwise, I might do something between my day job tasks, I might, between tasks there, I might open up Google Docs and punch something out, or, I actually don't write on the weekend because I consider writing to be work, even if it's not my day job. And so I feel weird writing on the weekend.
I can totally understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I do it during the week,
Netflix and stuff when I'm working.
Yeah. I mean, who among us, I used to write on the metro sometimes, when I was commuting, I would pull up Google Docs on my phone and punch something out. So, And then Brad asked if I had any bourbon from Laurel while I was at Scares That Care, and yes, I did. She had it at the table, and actually we got told that she had to keep the bourbon under the table when we weren't like drinking it, because like she technically wasn't supposed to have it in there.
Oh, because they don't have a liquor license or something, right? They're
I don't know why, because I'll be honest, maybe I shouldn't be sharing this, but there was one year at Scares That Care where like a couple of us drank beer and had it under the table, but I think it's just more the keeping it out so it doesn't look like we're selling. I think that was the main thing, because they sell alcohol at Scares That Care, and they even had someone going around the vendor room with like IV bags full of cocktails. So I think it was less about the act of drinking and more about they don't want it to look like you're selling it at your table, because none of us then license. Yeah.
Right.
So Jay just asked if I've done any collaborations on single stories or if there's someone I want to collab on a novel with. Unless my brain is completely blanking, I haven't finished any collaborative stories. My friend Tiffany Michelle Brown and I have a Google Doc with a story we were talking about collaborating on, and but we haven't. That's just more for fun. If I were to collaborate with anyone on a story, I'd probably love to write one with V. Castro. I think it would be fun to see what we could do with One Piece.
Yeah, I was just gonna say she did the
yeah, exactly.
The intro
well,
here.
We sort of collaborated on that because she wrote the foreword.
Right.
But
what about Laurel Hightower?
I think that would be interesting to write something, especially because she writes a lot of Crossroads wasn't, but I think of Whispers in the Dark and how that was like kind of a horror / crime procedural, or police procedural.
I still have to read that one. I gotta read that.
So that one's really good. And whereas, as Evelyn pointed out, my stories, even with the serial killers, have a notable lack of cops. So I think it would be interesting to put the two of them together.
Oh, yeah. There you go. She can write
it's true. I tend to not write the cops in there. It's other than like a passing thing of we don't want to get the cops on, like.
That would make a nice little collab. Laurel, if you see this, contact Sonora. That would be an interesting one. Maybe you could bring back a character from Without Condition and we could put it together.
How did they get caught, or did they?
Yeah, right. Would you like to see any of your books adapted for a movie or TV series?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that would just be fun because I love film and TV. I mean, obviously I love books too, but I minored in film studies. I'm a big cinephile.
Oh, okay.
So of course I'd love to see an adaptation. I think my short stories would probably be the first place to be, but I would be curious to see what like HBO or somebody would do with Without Condition. Like, I think that would be interesting to see it like either as a limited series or maybe a movie. I mean, of course, there's always the part of me that's like, they're going to ruin it if they adapt it. But, hopefully I'd be able to have something in the contract saying Sonora gets to look at your script.
Right.
I also know unless my name is Stephen King, I probably won't have that kind of power. So,
Well, Max Booth got his, by then he took the book and wrote it into a screenplay. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
That, you've gotten such notoriety for that.
I don't know how to write screenplays, so I'd have to figure out how to do that if I were going to shop around my own script. But right now I would just shop around my own story. So just be like, here, adaption.
Right. And speaking of Without Condition, who would you want to play the main character for that, if that did get optioned?
Right now, if it were like in the next couple years, because I know we're a bit on a limit since she's 22 years old and I'm not really familiar with younger actresses, but if it were made within the next 5 years, I'd probably say Florence Pugh.
Not familiar with her. What has she been in?
She was Danny in, what's it called? Midsummer.
Oh, yeah. That was a great movie, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great movie. I know some people are kind of torn on those movies. They either hate them or they love them.
I don't hate Midsummer or Hereditary. Thanks, Brad. He recommended getting signed on with Spin a Black Yarn. I'll look into that. But I also am not as much on the Ari Aster train. It's one of those where I see the movies and it's less hatred and more like I think this just doesn't work for me. Like it does. Like I can objectively admire some of the aspects of it, but as far as like something I like, that it's not. They're not movies I like. So no, I'm a bigger. I was about to say not that you have to choose, not that you have to choose, but I'm a bigger Robert Eggers fan. Like I like The Witch and I like The Lighthouse. Like those are my kind of movies.
I tried to watch The Lighthouse. I tried maybe the first few minutes of it, and I was like, "Oh, this is so slow paced for me." And with it being black and white. We
also saw it when it was like really rainy and drizzly, so that kind of helped too.
Yeah, it's still on my queue.
Movies.
I'll have to give it another go, but like I tried it and I was like, oh, it's so slow.
If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. Brad just said The Lighthouse was such a bizarre movie.
But I really enjoyed Midsummer. I thought that was a great one, and I didn't care for Hereditary all that much. Like I liked it, but I didn't think it was great. You know,
I didn't like Hereditary. I will say point blank, I didn't like Hereditary. I liked the first 90 minutes, but.
Yeah, the ending was weird. The ending was just
really no. I was just like the minute they brought out the Ouija board, I was like, "Are you fucking serious right now? They're gonna like pull this shit where she tries to contact the Ouija board and brings out a goddamn demon." Like I was just like,
yeah.
I'm that. If you can't tell, that's one trope I'm really tired of. So it was one of those moments where I'm like, "Have you never watched a horror movie?" Like,
right. Well, they've got the Ouija movies too.
Well, and I think I watched the first Ouija movie when I was bored one afternoon. It was on HBO, and I was like, I mean, it was stupid, but it was also just brainless stupidity, and it was only like 80 minutes long.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Okay. Do you have any other hobbies? I know you do cooking, which you share.
I cook a lot. Yeah, I cook a lot. I like to make nice meals. I aspire to be like the Barefoot Contessa, so that's the kind of stuff or the kind of approach I take to the kitchen. I'm getting a little bit more into baking again. I used to bake a lot of cupcakes in college and graduate school. I kind of fell out of it for a little bit, but now I'm kind of getting back into baking, like making cookies and cakes. And I'm also a alcohol enthusiast, but not in the way that I'm like an alcoholic. I just like learning to, do bartending, make my own liquor infusions, using the fancy equipment, drinking nice beer like I've been doing on camera. This is a local brewery called Caboose. And it's their summer ale. So, and I like those things. I like doing cross stitch. I like coloring. I've got a couple adult coloring books. Yeah, Jay, the ending of Hereditary messed it all up. I've even got both of the coloring books that Cassie made. She did the big book of horror, which I'm actually in, so soon I'll get to color my face. And then I also bought her Final Girls coloring book. I tend to like coloring more in the fall and winter, I think, because as it gets darker outside, I'm more inclined to do kind of crafty things than just web surfing all day. So
yeah, I can't remember who it was, but someone on Twitter had done a cross stitch a different movie scenes. I thought that was really cool. I wish I remembered who that was because it was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good at cross stitch, but not like the people who do the photorealistic cross stitch. That's like another level. The closest I can do, I actually just finished a project that I'll post a picture of later, which was like a portrait of children with balloons, and when you look at it from far away, it looks like a skull. And that took me a really long time because the border was so, time consuming. And now I'm working on a series of poisonous flowers. But those, because they're like shadowed and shading, it's a lot of different versions of the same color, and that can like definitely make my eyes tired, especially having to switch them a lot. So I'm thinking I might do some simpler cross stitch in the meantime, just to get back in the mood to do it, and then I'll finish it.
Yeah, cross stitching looks like it's very complicated. Like you'd have to, especially if you're creating your own pattern.
Or if you're doing counted cross stitch, and especially if like the pattern is all black and white shapes, because then you have to look at what the shapes look like, and then you have to count it on your cloth and then get going. And it's like, and especially if you have to change the color a lot, it can be a lot. So my godmother,
go to the wrong square.
Yeah, exactly. No, my godmother actually gave me a tiny kit of Nightmare Before Christmas cross stitch, and they're all like small, like 2 or 3 inch patterns. So I might just do that so I can keep stitching, but not go nuts like I am with this wolf's bane pattern that I'm working on now.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I also bought a Golden Girls cross stitch kit that has a lot of cute patterns. So, yeah.
How did you manage to find that?
It was on PBS, and my godmother sent it to me because she's like, it's on sale for like $10. I'm like, oh hell yeah, because they were having a clearance sale. So
right.
I will say the nice thing about buying counted cross-stitch books is you can make it over and over again because they tell you what thread to buy, and so you don't have to it's not like it's all done once you use the kit.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now, I was going to ask you, do you watch horror films? But obviously you do, because we've been talking about it.
I do. I will say I'm not as devoted as a lot of my horror friends. Like, I have not seen Malignant. I haven't watched a lot of the newer ones that came out. But I do enjoy going to see horror movies. I'm looking forward to seeing Lamb next month, the one with Numi Rapace. That's coming from A24. Oh, it looks creepy. And I didn't see, I'm not super, one of the things my husband and I have chatted about is that I always enjoy the first film in a horror franchise, but I usually won't see the sequels. So I'm not planning on seeing Halloween Kills. I didn't see the one that came out.
Really?
Like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'd be fine. It's just that's how I am. I like things very contained. Like, you've seen probably my tweets talking about how complex the Marvel movies are. Like, I can't get into like multiverse, multiple tellings type thing. I just want it to be done. Like when I see the movie.
Okay, yeah. Because I guess with the new Halloween film, they're trying to like everything past the second film is supposed to be like forgotten and like
well, and also like I get tired of everyone being like, this is the end this time, and it's like it's never the end as long as there's money to be made. Right. I mean, and I'm not saying that as a disrespect to anyone who likes the sequels, not at all. Like, I mean, there are people who like franchises, and I think that's great. And, if they're having fun and going to see it, then yeah. But, it's just when talking about horror movies, I tend to talk about, like, individual one-offs more often than the franchises. And even then, the one-offs, like, give or take which ones I see, especially new ones. But I do enjoy going to see them. So I saw that Brad asked what my favorite horror trope is. Do I have a favorite horror trope? Probably like the haunted house, especially like if we want to get into a trope, it's when they move in and there's all this like weird shit happening, but they still don't move out. Because we all say to ourselves, "Oh, I would be out of there the next day," but that's not true. We all hate moving, so like I just.
Oh yeah, true.
But that was also, I'm about to do a spoiler for Sinister, so mute your cameras if you don't want to hear. But that was actually one of the things I loved so much about Sinister was that the whole way is that it worked was you were convinced you had to leave the house, but it was leaving the house.
Found footage one.
Yes, but it was
okay.
And it was leaving the house that got you killed. And I thought that was such a good twist on it, because it's like, what if they just stayed in the house? Like
that one, it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Oh, so scary. I watched that during the day last year and I was still scared.
I know it was a good one, but it's been a while since I've seen it.
That movie's so scary. I saw Jay say something about The Conjuring, but I didn't get to read all of it. There we go. I can hardly get my wife to watch horror with me. She does. Oh, I can't get my husband to watch horror with me unless I'm like if I'm pulling I get to pick the movie card, because we switch between picking movies to watch at home, so no one's dominating it. But I always tell him, like, look, I'm not going to pick something you don't like, but he's always like, thinking, but it's horror, I'm not going to like it, even though everything I've shown him that I've chosen to show him, he likes. So like he liked Rosemary's Baby. He liked 28 Days Later. He liked Scream. He liked Halloween. I'm just like, Will.
There's going to be a third 28.
Jay, you're right. They did sink all their money into the old house, so and that's the other thing. But you could go stay in a Motel 6. Yeah. But no one leaves, and I love it. Oh my God, the lawnmower scene, or like the one that got me was barbecue. Like Family Barbecue, where
I gotta rewatch this movie because it's been like a few years since I've seen it.
If you look it up, if you go to YouTube, someone put all the snuff films together.
Oh, really?
Huh. So you can just watch it. Oh my God, so creepy. That's one that I'm hesitant to make my husband watch with me because I think it would scare him too much. And I'm not saying that to be rude. He's said as much, like, I don't want to watch this if it's going to disturb me. It's the same thing with The Woman in Black. I think that would be too creepy. That movie scared me. But that was more from jump scares than from being legitimately disturbing.
Right.
Sinister was legitimately disturbing. Like that opening credit sequence where they saw the limb off of the tree. Nope. That's when I knew. I'm like, nope. Oh, yeah. And there was a thing about The Conjuring. I didn't see that before, or the James.
Yeah, we saying something about it.
There were a few questions popping up, and I missed them because I was talking.
Yeah,
as I do.
They're popping up kind of fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying
I can hear. Yeah, she likes the Conjuring movies. Yeah, I didn't really like the first Conjuring movie because I don't like the "it could be solved with prayer" thing that they had at the end. But that's completely a personal. Right. I actually thought Poltergeist was bad too. It says, we let my 12-year-old daughter watch Poltergeist. She thought it was lame. Yeah, I didn't think that one was scary except for the clown. But
you're talking about the new one? Yeah. The remake of it?
No, the old one. The old one that
the old one?
Did. Yeah, I actually.
Oh man, I love that with the face melt thing. The guy goes to watch his face.
I don't know. It just doesn't scare me. But the clown scene scares the shit out of me. Like that could be the whole movie, and I would be like
the creepy religious leader in the Poltergeist. Man, that was yeah.
Well, and that does affect things because I've talked to people about The Exorcist, and that movie, I mean, it's creepy, it's disturbing, I love it, it's very well made, but it doesn't really terrify me. But I think that's because I grew up Methodist, and I've heard that if you grew up Catholic, that movie will scare the shit out of you because you were really, thinking. And whereas in Methodist church, I mean, hell is a place where people go to if they're not if they've sinned too much or something, but it's not used as a boogeyman or anything. It's just kind of you don't want to go there, but here's Jesus's teachings. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of other things in the Methodist church that you could critique, but they don't really do the demons and hell and stuff like that.
Yeah, Jay, I don't know if I'd let your 12-year-old watch The Exorcist, especially where the scene where she masturbates with a crucifix.
Yeah, don't let the 12-year-old watch The Exorcist. I watched it, I think, when I was 15.
Or what's that thing? Your mother sucks cocks in hell.
No, that movie's a hard R. I mentioned this a couple times on Twitter, but I actually went to graduate school at Georgetown, which is where they filmed The Exorcist.
Oh, okay.
And my classes were next to what are fondly known as the exorcist steps. So I used to actually walk up those to go to class. And there is actually a picture of me in the Washington Post posing at the bottom of those steps if you want to do a little searching.
Yeah, how would I find that?
I'll have to look. I'll see if I can find it, and then I'll send you the link if you want to send it out to people, because it's from an old article. It may not be online anymore.
Oh, yeah, right. Ooh, there's a Wayback Machine.
Yeah. So Brad asked if I have any real life fears that I've incorporated into a story. Yes, I'm just trying to think of how I've done that. Claustrophobia. I'm claustrophobic, and there is one real instance I put into all the pieces coming together where he describes being in a place that was so dark that he thought he was being suffocated. And that happened once when I came from our more urban area to go visit my parents, who they don't live in the boonies, but it's definitely like darker than it is around here, where there's just like street lights everywhere. So it was so dark that I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, and I actually started to like breathe a little hard because I felt like trapped in the darkness. So
yeah, that would be, if you can't see anything, that would be kind of creepy. Okay, so do you have any other upcoming projects?
No,
you say you're working on another novel, right? Or
yeah, Diet Riot is the main in progress one, and then I'm going to be gradually working on Errant Roots over the next year, so I'm probably not going to release that until 2023, mostly because I want to give myself time to write it. You know, like you mentioned, like we were talking about earlier, you know, I've been kind of churning them out, so I'm telling myself I don't have to release something every single year. I've got plenty of stuff out, and there's also, you know, there's ways to like just keep. I also want to take some time to maybe like look into other ways to get the books I already have out there more. Like I'd maybe like to look into doing audiobooks for some of them, because right now none of them have audio versions, and so it might be nice to get those recorded.
Oh yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that'll help like bring back some of the ones you've written before.
Mm-hmm. There was a question that popped up, then it disappeared. About eye horror. Yeah, Brad loves eye horror. You should write more eye horror. Okay. Actually, one of my friends and my first roommate out of school, she had a thing with eyes, and I forgot to tell her about the part in 28 Days Later where he punches in those guys' eyes into his sockets. And so she just like had a small freak out because I legitimately like forgot to mention it because I forgot she had a thing about eyeballs, and so she was just like, oh my god, like when that part happened. So sorry.
They're making a third one for that series.
Really? Ugh, I hated the sequel. I was so mad. Like
really? Oh, I really liked it. I thought it was because they weren't zombies. It was like a rage virus. So I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean it's a viral apocalypse movie. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sorry. I hated that movie because that was another thing where if they just hadn't been idiots, everything would have been prevented. And if those two teens had not gone out into the non-quarantine zone and brought back the virus, maybe like they all would have been fine.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact that I don't know if it's supposed to be 8 years later. I think it's supposed to be 28 months later or something like that. Because there were 28 days later, then 28 weeks later.
Yeah. Let it rest. You know they're going to remake it eventually anyway, so, you know, just...
I don't know about that. I mean, it's still pretty fresh. I don't think they're going to remake that one.
Is it? I mean,
did you see how...
is the movie 20 years old, or is it like almost 20 years old?
Is it really that old? I didn't think it would. Let me Google that.
It was from the early aughts. I know that. Like, while you're looking that up, there's a fun fact about 28 Days Later. Stephen King once bought out an entire movie theater so he could watch it by himself. And, you know, when people say what type of level of riches would you aspire to, that's it. Like being able to buy an entire movie theater and watch a movie by myself. Like, that would be amazing.
It came out in 2002, it says.
Okay, so next
2000.
year is the 20th anniversary. So
Yeah.
that movie was so good, though. Yeah, Jay, that is fair. 98% of all movies, if they weren't idiots, it wouldn't happen. But I don't want it to be so blatantly obvious. like
Did you see how the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre got bought by Netflix, so it's not even going to have a theatrical release?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, yeah, I forgot. They're
I'll be
supposed to be
honest,
by
here's
some
a horror
director.
confession. I still haven't seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, you definitely got to see that one. It's
I really want to see it. Yeah. I'll watch it
Whereas
eventually.
the sequels, I felt like weren't. The sequels I didn't think really were that great.
Yeah.
But definitely, it's one of those movies where you definitely have to see the original first one, and I feel like all the ones that followed that were kind of cheesy after that.
Yeah, well, because they were probably just more like. Oh, Brad. Yeah, Brad doesn't agree. You know,
I thought
I
it was Hooper, man.
I mean, I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses. Does that count?
That's another great one.
It is. I actually do really like Rob Zombie, even though I've only seen like a handful of his movies. I mean, once again, I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses, but I haven't seen any of the sequels. And I saw Lords of Salem, which I actually really liked. And I
didn't
did
like
see
that one.
Oh, you didn't? It's a polarizing movie. And I also, I only saw this because we were in college and I was bored. I did go see his remake of Halloween, and it was okay.
Yeah, it was decent.
Yeah, it was fine. You know, it was a good remake. So, I like his music more than his movies. You know, I would want to see him doing the Monsters, but as a Rob Zombie movie and not like a family-friendly Monsters thing.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of wondering what he's going to do with it, because, like, I don't know if it's going to be, is it going to be Rob Zombie kind of R-rated, or is it going to be family-friendly PG-13?
I have a feeling it'll be kind of family-friendly because it's going to be on Peacock.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, Brad, that's cool. It says Captain Spaulding and Otis were the two main characters in the haunted house I worked in. Was that it? I wonder if that was at Universal Horror Nights, which that's on my bucket list to get to Universal Horror Nights one time.
Okay, yeah. What was the other one? Okay, what books would you recommend not written by you, like a major release and then an indie? I like to have the two choices, that way we can...
Let's see. A major release. I'm trying to think of what I've read recently. I've read some good books lately. Well, the last indie book I read, and this is completely not horror, so I'll also recommend a horror one, but the last indie book I read... the reason I might give an alternate is because I read a smut book called The Architect by Nikki Sloan, and it was incredible. I loved it. Tiffany Michelle Brown recommended it to me. It was so good. Like, I was just reading it on the train because I was reading it to and from New York, and I'm there like on my Kindle, so I would recommend The Architect by Nikki Sloan. I would also recommend
Goddess series.
Huh?
It's a part of a series. It says
it is, but you don't need to read the other ones to get it. Like, I have not read The Pool Boy or The Doctor, but I have read The Architect, and it's great. Like, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're into smut. Oh, okay. Brad just said it was a local haunted house here in Kentucky. Got it.
I sometimes read that stuff. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I like D.H. Lawrence. I got a few of his books.
Real quick, let me look at my Goodreads. I know this makes me sound like I can't think of books, but really, like, I'm such a fast reader that sometimes even the stuff I like, I forget when I'm trying to, like, card catalog everything. So let me see what I've read recently, and I can give you some recommendations. I would definitely say Goddess of Filth by V. Castro would be the indie horror one I'd recommend.
Yeah, that's one that that's on my to read list too. There's so many books that came out after the pandemic, though. Like, so many books came out.
Yeah, and I mean they're still coming. I mean, there's just like so many. I'm looking through like, oh yeah, all of these books I've read this year. But a bigger release I'd recommend, like a major release. I really enjoyed The Five Wounds by Kirsten Valdez Kade. It's a book about a family to and from Easter, and it's just about them. It's a family saga, so it's really good.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. It's actually the word five, not like the letter, not the number
Hmm.
five. All right, I'll add that one to my list. That sounds interesting.
Oh, thank you, Mindy. Yes, there are a lot of great books coming out. I've got like so many on my to read list, and Goodreads was like doing all these giveaways last month, and so and I've like signed up for 20 million of them, and it's like all these good books.
I've been kind of slacking. I haven't really been looking at what the Goodreads giveaways are.
Well, they were just
Yeah.
so last month they were doing like a month of giveaways, so there was more than normal. And
Oh,
so
really?
as
Huh.
such, more were like popping up into my feed, and I was also checking out like view all giveaways since they were doing that. I will take this opportunity to say I am running a Goodreads giveaway right now for someone to share my
I
nightmares.
saw that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
So if
and
you want to enter, it's free to enter. I think it's US only though. You can win an ebook copy. It's ebook only, but you will get it about 3 weeks before it comes out. And it will be the final version. So you're not getting like all my typos in there.
I forgot to mention that, like,
That's
because I
okay, I
saw
remember.
that when I was setting up my links. Yeah, and that comes out on October 19th. Is that correct?
Yes, October 19th, which is a Tuesday. I'm old school when it comes to the release dates.
Okay, right, right. And where can people find you? Like, where are you most active on?
I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me at Sonora Writes. I you can also find me at sonorarights.com. That's my website, although that's more like
Let me
where
put
I
that up
update
in
full
the.
short stories. You can also reach it through sonorataylor.com. Um, but yeah, Twitter is where I'm most active. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but that's more food and pet pictures with a little bit of the books thrown in. And my Facebook page, I mean, it's there, but I'm not very active on there anymore, I'll be honest. So, I mean, like, you can follow it if you want. I might resurrect it one day, but I mostly use Facebook just to be in other groups. So I'll just be 100% honest on that. Um, Oh, great, Mindy. As she said, she's already started seeing it a bit on BookTube and other socials. And just real quick, while I'm thinking about it, Brad asked if I have a dream publisher I'd like to work with. I'd really like to work with Raw Dog Screaming Press. I really like the work they put out, and I think that would be a good match. I've worked with Cemetery Gates before, but maybe working with them on a book authored by me as opposed to being in an anthology would be good because I've really enjoyed working with them. But I've also really enjoyed working with all the presses I've worked with. I've been very lucky in that the people I've published
Yeah, there's
stories
kind of a
like
list. Quite the
yeah.
list on the back here.
Well, and none of them have been bad experiences. Like Candisha Press has been great. Camden Park Press was the first press to publish me. They published Hearts Are Just Likes in a Poe anthology, and they were fantastic. Siren's Call was fantastic. Burial Day was fantastic. Like, I'm just gonna be like, everyone was fantastic, but they were. I mean, everyone was great.
Right, right.
They were prompt with payment. They were very responsive. So you can't go wrong with any of those publishers.
Yeah, especially if they treat their authors right. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, because there's some. I've heard some horror stories just being on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean,
A
I've
lot of
never been
bad
mistreated.
publishers.
Honestly, the only things I've run into is like I've submitted stories and never heard back or like got ghosted instead of just rejected.
Oh,
And
really?
and if that's the worst thing I can say, then I think I've done pretty well. Cuz at least then like money wasn't taken and like my time wasn't really wasted. So
Right, right. Yeah, I never knew that like there were publishers out there that would just like not reply at all.
I mean, it's rare, but it has happened. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like, what the hell? Like, what do you do in those instances? Do you write them and be like, did you get my
Well, a couple of
submission?
times. No, well, one of them I found out my story wasn't in when they released the table of contents and the story wasn't included. I'm like, oh, okay, then yeah, I guess it got rejected. And then
Wow.
another one, it was just a call for submissions that never ended. And so finally I just wrote, because this was like almost a year, I think, that the story was being reviewed, and so I just wrote and said I'd like to withdraw it. So, you know. So again, not a huge headache on either end. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. But nine times out of 10, like 99% of publishers I work with, they'll always give a rejection or, just some type of correspondence. So
That's good. Yeah. What would you recommend to people who are just getting started in writing and they're trying to interact with publishers? Like, what advice would you give them?
Know that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Almost no one has stumbled into a multi-million-dollar contract with the Big Five. Even Stephen King got rejected multiple times before he had his first story published. And he worked a day job, I think, until probably the 80s. So like even when Carrie and The Shining and Pet Sematary were coming out, or not Pet Sematary, Salem's Lot, like he was an English teacher for a long time before. So just know that like it might seem like someone suddenly is huge, but it's usually just years of work that you haven't seen. So don't feel like you're behind everybody. And also just know that everyone is at different places in their career and at different times, and it's an up and down. There's going to be times where it seems like everyone else is getting accepted but you, but then there's also going to be times where you're getting the acceptances and, it's a little quiet on the other end. And just know that don't self-reject, just keep going for it. And also just ask yourself, like, how do you want to get your stuff out there, and then find ways on that path.
I think that's some great advice.
The other thing I'll say is remember, other authors are your friends, not your competition. So don't, try and like grandstand and be like, I'm better than everyone. And huge piece of advice, don't treat other authors or reviewers or writers as stepping stones, because people notice when they've been walked up to a certain place. And,
right.
It's like just be kind. That would probably be my biggest advice. Be kind and write for you before you write for anyone else.
Definitely like that. Yes. Basically, don't be an asshole.
Yeah, don't be an asshole. Be in law, don't be a dick. But it's so amazing how people even forget that. Actually, another piece of advice I'd give, but take this as you will. If you really feel the need to complain about something, don't do it in type and publicly, because that stuff, will live with you forever. Even if you were having a momentary moment, just either talk about it in private with a trusted friend or spouse, or write it down in your journal or something. But it never looks good if half of your Twitter feed is complaining, or passive aggression, or side talking. It's not cool to have the angry persona, but not that you can't ever be angry about anything, but you know what I mean. If you see someone's Twitter feed and it always seems like they're side mouthing people or just complaining all the time, or being like, I can't believe blah blah blah, and it's just make sure that that's balanced with positivity.
I think I've seen quite a few tweets about people complaining about 4-star ratings, and I'm like, are you serious?
No,
4 stars.
I even wrote a post about that, and it's like I said, how do you respond to bad reviews? You don't respond to them, especially on Twitter, and especially to the reviewer. And it's like I even admitted in the post, I'm not exactly thrilled when I read reviews that aren't great, but I'm also not going to show my ass on Twitter and be like, how dare you, I'm going to just brush it off and move on.
Especially that one author, I'd never heard of her until this whole deal with she cried about a 4-star
Yeah.
review, and I probably would, if I would have heard about that author in any other way, I may have been interested in reading her book, but now it's a definite
Yeah,
no.
no, absolutely not. Like, no, 4-star reviews are not bad. 3-star reviews are not bad.
Are not bad, yeah.
And look, I wouldn't encourage like trash talking, but if someone's being mean in their review, that's a completely different beast. Like if someone was like I hated Little Paranoia, Sonora is fat and ugly and I can't stand that bitch, I'd be like, wow, okay, that's uncalled for. But if someone was just like,
that has nothing to do with the book either,
I'm gonna be like, okay.
So that would be
Fortunately, I've not had any
people to do that though. Like,
what?
You would hope that people don't write reviews like that, though, but you never know.
You would hope, but you never know. Like there are people like I see some of the craziest reviews, especially on Amazon. Oh, Brad asked if I read my reviews. Yeah. I mean, I try not to get too involved, but I admit I'm curious. And especially if I'm tagged in them, yeah, I'm going to read them. But every now and then I might peruse Goodreads and see what people are saying. But I try not to like be too obsessive about it. But yes,
I don't think you're the only one who does, because I've noticed that Stephen Graham Jones reads his reviews.
I'll be honest, like especially with the when the whole Goodreads debacle, when like ratings were disappearing, I'm like, oh, a lot of people who said they don't read reviews are suddenly admitting that they pay attention to reviews. But I was mostly thinking that jokingly. Like it was a concern when like people who had like 200 reviews suddenly were down to like 40. I mean, that makes a difference. So
yeah, did they ever fix that?
They did. Yeah, they all got restored. Like I lost a few too, but then they got put back up. So it was just an error. But yeah, I think a lot of people read their reviews. I mean, heck, I see other authors on Twitter screenshot like Goodreads reviews and use that to promote their books. So, you know, I mean, it's a good way to market. So,
right.
I feel it would be hard not to read reviews. Yeah, exactly, Brad. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to live in a vacuum. I think the only way I'd stop is if it was like hurting my mental health. You know, like if I was just constantly refreshing, or if I was getting upset or angry or worried, and then I'd probably like try and make myself not look. But
or if you're Stephen King and there's just so many reviews you can't bother.
Yeah, he probably does not read his reviews. And even if he reads a bad one, I'm sure he's not going to go on Twitter and be like, how dare you give me 4 stars?
Right.
You know?
He's just like counting his money, you know? Like,
it's like, oh, let me cry into my thousands here. You know, it's kind of like when people come for either Nora Roberts or Danielle Steele. Like, are you really going to like it? Do you really think they care what you think?
Right.
Like Danielle Steele, this is amazing. Danielle Steele has a desk that is shaped like her books. Like,
really?
Yes. Oh, look it up. It's incredible. And I think Nora Roberts has a diamond encrusted pen.
Wow.
No, Nora Roberts' sales are something ridiculous. Like she sells a book like every 5 minutes. It's incredible. Well, and you know, I don't know if the stat has changed recently, but the highest selling author in the history of time, I think, is Agatha Christie. Or at least she was the first.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah, it was something like that. So a lot of people would assume it would be a man just because of being published, like not even just sexism, it's just because of who gets published. But it was Agatha Christie, I think, is like the best-selling author of all time or something like that.
Right. Because I think movies kind of help with that too. You know,
yeah,
like film
and I mean,
adaptations definitely, bring in interest in books.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's the thing about the reading reviews. I was like, hello, Brad, and I see it's the question.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally clicked it again.
Okay. No worries.
But we're over an hour. I'd like to thank you for coming on, and I want to remind people
this was a lot of fun.
that this comes out on October 19th.
Read it.
Grab
it's
a copy.
Good,
If you go back up to the top of the chat, I did post a link where you can pre-order the Kindle version. And you were saying we talked about this off here, but the paperback edition will be coming out too.
Yes,
On
the
that same day.
paperback will be available like by release day. You know, hint, hint, it might be a little earlier because I usually publish ahead of time in case there's any problems. But the big launch will be October 19th. It'll be available on Amazon, and then eventually it will be available places like Bookshop. It just the way it gets to those is out of my hands. I just enable it to be on those channels.
Mm-hmm.
So once they're ready, I'll start posting those links, like, you know, saying here it is on Bookshop, here it is on such and such. And with the other retailers like Draft to Digital, if you go to the Books to Read link, which I think I also sent you, Dan, there are other retailers on there like Barnes and Noble and Apple, and you can pre-order the ebook through there as well. But that one will be ebook only because right now Draft to Digital's paperback creator is in beta, so, and I don't have access to that yet. So eventually I hope to post paperbacks there, but for now it's digital only, whereas you can get the paperback through Amazon and through the other channels they'll distribute to you.
Right.
Like you can actually, you know, if your independent bookstore has a search portal, try searching for my books because they do show up in some search engines. And like you can find it at Walmart, you know, places like that. I'll also say for any self-published authors watching this, when you publish a paperback through Amazon, select expanded distribution because that's how it gets into those other channels.
That's a good tip because I didn't know that, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone else tell anyone that.
Yeah, that's how you do it. And so even though I remember I was feeling a little gross because I'm like, oh, but it's going to all these independent places, but it's still coming from Amazon. And, you know, Evelyn correctly pointed out, yeah, but they're getting more money that way than if people just ordered it through Amazon. So, you know, it's kind of like a best of both worlds option for self-publishers. And
like I said, that's good to know because I think, you know, I never knew that you have that option to do that. Like,
yeah, I mean, the one thing is there is a minimum price for your book if you set expanded distribution, but more often than not, it's a fair price. Like, it's not going to be anything ridiculous that you need to charge for a paperback.
Right. Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you again, and thank you, whoever's still here. I don't know because it seems like Dan. Yes, thank you. Definitely going to be getting to this sooner rather than later. Hopefully, I want to read that before it comes out. Is there any embargoes before? Like, can I post a review before it comes out?
Go ahead.
Wait? Okay.
People are actually already posting reviews, and I've been sharing blurbs. Okay. So yeah, go ahead whenever you want to post a review.
Okay, great. All right, thank you again, and we are signing out. Brad's got one more thing.
Bye, Brad.
You too, Brad.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Yep. Bye.